Hey, folks. This is Jesse Cope, back with another episode of the American Soul Podcast. Hope y'all are doing well, wherever y'all are, whatever part of the day it is for you. It is a borderline gorgeous day here, and we're going to go take one of our little walks down the road. Had one puppy dog so far. No children, no wifey. The birds are out, but they haven't discovered me yet, or they'd be making noise, so that may come with time. As always, I just can't not tell y'all thank you. We've had a really good week so far already for our little podcast, and it's because of y'all, and I'm very grateful for that and humbled by it, that you would spend time, which is one of the things we're going to talk about today. If we get to that part of it, here listening to me ramble on, and two, for those of y'all that continue to share the podcast and to help it to grow, because that's really how it happens, right, folks? When y'all tell other people about it, they pay more attention to it than any amount of advertising or anything else could ever achieve. So thank y'all so much. I hope that y'all are getting something out of it. I assume that you are. You wouldn't be coming back. And I hope that our country is getting something out of it, even if just a little bit. So my voice, I had somebody that listens to the podcast pretty regularly tell me once that one of the things they liked was that I stayed pretty even keeled. I'm afraid I'm going to break that today. We'll see. I feel kind of agitated. I don't know if that's the right word. And sometimes that doesn't translate to the best podcast. So if I let y'all down here, I apologize in advance. I have noticed very frequently over months, past year or two, that either by choice or accident, I don't know which, we still are failing today, often, not always, to really focus on, I'll say it this way. I had a pastor who used to say, and he's quoting somebody else, y'all may be familiar with this quote. I can't remember who said it originally. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. You got to think about that for a minute. At least I do, because I'm kind of slow. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And don't, we're not doing that. And here's what I'm talking about. We see, and this this episode is going to be two parts of a monologue, basically, folks. So I apologize in advance for that too. There's a problem that I'm going to talk about, and I thought about this analogy for a while as I was getting ready for this podcast, and I thought about a few different analogies, and this is the one that I came back to, and it's one I've used here before. We have a lot of problems in America today, but we have a lot of people, and this has really been true for decades, folks. It's one of the reasons we're in the mess that we're in. They get really fired up, we do, as a nation, as a people, about the symptoms of the disease. And we want to treat those symptoms. But we're not really fixing anything. If you go into a doctor and the doctor treats the symptoms, you got a headache, you got whatever, and you treat the symptoms, you're not really fixing the disease. You're not healing the body. You'll give the person relief, temporary relief for a while, but you're not addressing the real issue. And at some point, the symptoms are going to overcome the treatments. The disease is still going to be there and be worse. Kind of like a cancer. And you're going to be in a worse position after having treated the symptoms of the cancer instead of the cancer attacking the cancer than you were to begin with. And I never have understood this Bible verse, and it just popped into my head, and I'm not sure that this is exactly what was meant by it. But there's a parable that Jesus told about an evil spirit being kicked out of a man, and the man's soul, their inside, being swept clean, and the spirit went out and went all over the wasteland, and then came back and found the house, the man, in order, and everything swept up and picked up. And then he went and found 7 more evil spirits and went back inside the man, and the condition of the man was worse at the end than at the beginning. I'm not real sure that applies here, folks, but it might. It just came into my head, so I'm sharing it with you. So here's the problem. So that's the analogy. Here's the problem. We see so much today about election fraud and vaccine mandates and probably a couple other items. And I'm going to go ahead and say this right at the get-go. I'm not saying that those are not important issues at all. So hear me when I say that. I am not saying that those are not extremely important issues. But here's the deal. Those are not the cancer. Those are the symptom or symptoms. We have all these truckers up in Canada right now and farmers that are trying to shut down cities in order to get back to work so that they can put food on the table for their families. In and of itself, that's a noble cause. You can make some arguments about how they're doing it or when or et cetera, but in a free society, the ability of a man to go out and work and earn money, food to put on the table for his family, that's a very noble cause. But where was this same anger and vitriol and dedication and action? And I'm going to switch back to the United States right now, but Canada, probably this applies to y'all too. Where was this dedication in America to giving children the right to life? The 60 million plus children that we've slaughtered of our own. Where was the shutting down of cities? Where were the protests? Just widespread, massive action? When the Supreme Court made those horrific decisions about taking God, completely immoral and un-American decisions with no basis in history or heritage, to take God out of publicly funded education, where was all this? Where was this righteous anger and indignation? Which those two have done more damage than any election fraud or vaccine mandates ever dreamed of doing over the last half century plus. Where were we on that? As tens of millions of illegal immigrants, criminals, terrorists have flooded the country, where was this action? Where was just righteous anger that we're not going to deal with this anymore? We're not going to take this anymore. When this LGBTQ movement and the sexual deviancy that goes along with that flooded into our schools and culture and has destroyed the lives of so many of our children over multiple generations. Where was this anger? Where was this just righteous indignation that we're not going to deal with that anymore? You're not going to do that. Because all of those issues dramatically, fundamentally more important than any election fraud or vaccine mandates. And this is how I'm going to back this up, folks, on this podcast when we're talking about the American soul. Because I always try and tie this in to our founders, our great leaders as best I can. So I'm going to read a couple, and some of y'all are going to be pretty familiar with these. John Adams, June 21st, 1776. Statesmen, my dear sir, may plan and speculate for liberty, but it is religion and morality alone which can establish the principles upon which freedom can securely stand. The only foundation of a free constitution is pure virtue, and if this cannot be inspired into our people in a greater measure than they have it now, they may change their rulers and their forms of government, but they will not obtain a lasting liberty. Patrick Henry. This brought on the war which finally separated the two countries and gave independence to ours. Whether this will prove a blessing or a curse will depend upon the use our people make of the blessings which a gracious God hath bestowed on us. If they are wise, they will be great and happy. If they are of a contrary character, they will be miserable. Righteousness alone can exalt them as a nation. Reader, wherever thou art, remember this, and in thy sphere practice virtue thyself and encourage it in others. Folks, whether we have President Trump at the helm or somebody else, whether we have vaccine mandates or we don't, if we, whatever it is that you want, whichever side, whichever way, if you immediately got that, if we don't get virtue back in our lives by action and deed, not just word, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Just like Adam said, we're simply exchanging one tyranny for another. If we don't have virtue and morality in us as a people, if we don't follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, we're sitting here getting so wound up about these symptoms of the cancer that is the evil, godless values of the left. And we've had all these other vastly, exponentially more evil and demented values pushed on our country for decades. And we haven't gotten this bent out of shape about it. We haven't even begun to act on those more important issues the way we seem to be going right now on these lesser issues. And I know I'm stepping on some toes here, folks. I know for a fact that some of the people that listen to this podcast are getting irritated right now. And that's okay. We have got to keep the main thing the main thing. We have got to keep our priorities in order. And they just still are not. And it just feels like God is just tapping us on the shoulder saying, hey, this is not what is important. Your relationship individually and as a country with me is what's important. These actions, these evil actions that go directly against my commands and teachings, that is what is important. Because wherever you look, folks, no matter how hard you look, there is not a single verse in the entire Bible that talks about vaccine mandates. Not one. Not a single one. I dare you to go find it. And if you find it, let me know. Because y'all do. Y'all tell me when I make mistakes. And Lord knows I don't have the entire Bible memorized. But I don't think you're going to find one. But there's a lot about sanctity of life. There's a lot about sanctity of marriage. There's a lot about treating the foreigner and the native born citizen according to the same law and justice. There's a lot about loving God with all our heart, mind, and soul and following Him. And we are, as President Woodrow Wilson said, a Christian nation. We have got to keep our eye on the ball, folks, and we just aren't right now. We just are not. I'm going to read one more from President Harry Truman. The fundamental basis of this nation's laws was given to Moses on the Mount. The fundamental basis for our Bill of Rights comes from the teachings we get from Exodus and St. Matthew, from Isaiah and St. Paul. If we don't have a proper fundamental moral background, we will finally end up with a totalitarian government which does not believe in rights for anybody except the state. You see, that's what we see today. We see the state taking more and more and more. You want to talk about the vaccine mandates from a states' right point of view, you can go right to town on it, but you've got to remember that those are the symptoms and not the cause. The cause is the fact that we have had millions of Americans who support the left or are indifferent, even worse, to those evil values of the left, pushing God out of the center of our country, out of the center of our children's education, out of our homes for decades. And that's why we're here. That's why we're here. It's not the other way around. Vaccine mandates, the election fraud, if you want to go there for the last election cycle, that didn't destroy our country. That wasn't the start. That wasn't the impetus. That's not what began all this. It began back in 1940s, 50s, 60s, even before that, like Lenin and Dewey back in the 20s, where they said, man, if we can just get them away from God and their family, if we can just get them interested in athletics and sex, if we can just divide them based on race and ethnicity and gender and class, then we got them. Then we got them. Then we can destroy America. We can destroy freedom and liberty. We can destroy the republic. We can do whatever we want. The main thing, folks, is our relationship with God and our actions. Are we a moral people? Are we a virtuous people? Because I tell you what, you can fix whichever problem you want right now immediately with a snap of your fingers. And if we don't turn back to God as the main thing in our country, give it 5 years, give it 10 years. We'll be right back where we are, but even worse off because we will have become a weaker people. We will have soothed ourselves under the delusion that we have fixed the problem, and we will have fixed nothing. And we will have given our enemies more time to grow stronger. And the next time, we won't be as strong. So in all this, folks, as we're going through this mess, as these dark times are coming, as this revolution or civil war or whatever it turns out to be is coming, we have to remember that if we don't fundamentally shift back to God and Jesus Christ, both privately first and publicly in our institutions and our policy, then just like John Adams said, we're just exchanging one time and tyranny for another. Just like Truman says here, we will finally end up in the end when we're so weak that we can't even resist it anymore because we don't even know what to resist, with a totalitarian government which does not believe in rights for anybody but the state. We got a lot of work to do, folks. We just got to make sure that we're attacking the cancer and not trying to treat the symptoms. Y'all have a wonderful rest of whatever is left of your day. I hope that the day is a good one. I hope that you feel God's presence in your life and your community. I hope that your family is strong and healthy. And I thank y'all so much for joining me, for giving me a little bit of your time. God bless y'all. God bless your families. God bless America. We will talk to y'all again real soon. Looking forward to it.